The Crusoe Morality by Bart Wolfe. Introducing Robinson. Crusoe's been sitting on the same rock now some 760 days, though God knows he's forgotten how to count after the first 2 years passed. It's not as if he's bored, more like the hermit crab becoming accustomed to his shell, a skin of sunburn, long hair, rags, and the sea talking back to him till he's hollow as the coconut he just drilled. As for that old crab, he'll outstare him yet, if only his left eyeball would stay quite still. A parrot's Jake, captain of his soul, on his shoulder, a lookout doing well. Yet the woman that he dreams would outlive green coconut's milk, both sour and sweet, would share a simple hollow in the sand where surf has handed tambourines to mind and sing to him of home. Home? A bed. A place where people speak of silk, of pudding, beef, and something warms the blood. The language, well, it's unnecessary. If only he could dream of footprints in the sand, of one called she who's come to hand. Their progeny would be all laughter like the water. But meanwhile, he stretches out his smallest prayerful limb and plays a tune called Lonely. Only the sun sees him. The time he missed the boat. Where's Crusoe now? He's been missing from his rock, from the time a ship sailed past, moving from a dot to a white kerchief and back to a dot again before vanishing. The fire he built, ready to light and signal, has depleted from last week's cooking pot, a giant clam for stewing yams and bits of fish in one dish. And now Crusoe's gone to sleep, or worse still, upped and died before his tide turned in. No, not really. What he'll never know won't hurt. He's busy contemplating his navel, with a lime-green lizard's toes tickling him lazily, too slow to dive off his gaunt and concave stomach. Besides, the lizard's tied by thread of bark from a rear left leg to his little finger, just so that he can make sure the creature stays. And he's doing all this underneath a banyan tree where the wind and he are having a mutual dialogue on meaning. Shush, shush, he rasps. Shoo, shoo, the wind hums back. And suddenly he sees the face of God overhead in the fat green fingers ripening. Dirty, rotten tooth. Talking of God, was he? Toothache makes him shout his prayers, a wild yell. There he goes, running down the beach and throwing himself headfirst into the sand, this apparition of a skeleton dressed in skins, screaming banshee bedlam in the wind and coming to a full stop suddenly. He's trying to knock himself out, but he's too afraid to bang his head on his bloody rock. Instead, he jiggles his toes in the sand and fingers his gums, then finds the tooth loose enough to wiggle as he gurgles, "Hell!" with a whine, with a choked shriek, with a 1, 2, 3 pull. Ah! Not yet. Try again. Another scream. Wait. Here it comes. With a cough and a rasp, he spatters and spits a mouthful of bad taste onto a bunch of dry kelp the sea vomited up at high tide. It lies there unconcerned, while Crusoe holds up his holy tooth, the magnificence of which makes him wonder whether a necklace would improve his looks. Castles in the sand. Today he's a boy again, back on Blighty's briny beachhead, playing at castles on the strand. Wondrous, towering strongholds, ports to voyagers returning. But like all dreams, he knew the tides would change. In a hiss of tambourines, a wave of knaves, his castles would crumble, come crashing down, and all the world would end. Posted in the wash, his boats a bob of driftwood, toys of the tides. Crusoe's busy looking for bottles full of messages, a miracle to come in. And yes, the occasional unsigned letter did come. A tea-chest's top, some masthead's flotsam, meaning by any other name, Brighton, Amsterdam, Bombay, Spain. That night the wind whispered atop the spume. Crusoe began to dream of a strange sea serpent cresting the waves. Its plumed head roared while it stitched the blanket sea. Harnessed to a palm-branched raft, a mermaid beside him, Crusoe commands his strange sea steed to bear him across the ocean home. The cheers of kings met him, with thunder in their greeting. But when his eyes were opened, it was only empty horses of the white-maned foam. Robinson woke alone. Kingdom of the Crab. Mirrored sea, not a cloud in the sky. To hear the rolling racket of a horse and cart would be better than the cavorting of a speechless crab beneath a rock pool's crystal skin. It scuttles across Crusoe's ogling face, agog as an image of him. Sighting a couple of coupling crustaceans, kissing claws, grappling deep in the davy dank below, Crusoe wets his brow with a splash and crashes into song. A crab I am, I've become, a hermit crab at that. His audience, a nearby anemone, shrinks back. King of crabdom's domain, my son, sings he, stopping to regard his stick-insect form, gaunt limbs, angled arms, before scuttling down on all fours over the sand-swept floor. He comes unannounced, and face to face with the late great carapace of a lobster's shell, and suddenly sees his own skeleton there, staring whittled and whitewashed in the sand, cuttle-fished, scuttled as the bare bones of a beached wreck's ribs. The first sign. The first time he saw it, his stomach turned, an uneasy, queasy feeling. Sure enough, a footprint in the sand. He was not alone. Someone watching him. Perhaps God was playing tricks with his mind, his own footprint, and he'd forgotten walking this way this morning. But what if it was a woman? Should he have a haircut, trim his beard, scrub his skins? Was he repulsive? Should he make her his slave? Could it be a mermaid? Don't be stupid, Robinson. Mermaids have no feet. A big footprint. You couldn't miss it. She must be a very big woman. Maybe she was watching him right now, too scared to show herself from the undergrowth. It had been a hell of a long time since he'd seen a mirror, which the footprint was, made him naked as a picked scab in the eye of God. Supposing he kicked some sand over it? No. The impression was in his brain, deep as sunburn. Soldier Sailor. A farmer, I ask you, the frigging rock that lets the watergate open to channel down the furrows from the frothy stream won't budge. It's stuck. And Crusoe's broken his hoe trying to move it, not to mention hurting his back and getting itchy with sweat under his loincloth. As for his pet pig, it's run riot among the yams despite the fence. Perhaps he'll make Christmas come early this year, fistfuls of ham. Who wants to be a farmer? He'd rather have been an innkeeper and counted barrels of ale and squeezed the tits of barmaids with a slap and a tickle thrown in. Instead, here he goes, throwing the remains of his hoe at the fat sow's rump and misses, sod it. If it wasn't for the piglets, he'd stick to fish. The rock finally moves with a heave and a hoe and rolls downhill, flattening his prize pumpkin, narrowly missing the bloody pig. Down he sits himself and gathers seeds. Waste not, want not, starts to count. Tinker, tailor, candlestick maker, rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief. Man, meet thy maker. Then he came across the fire some human bones, remains, cannibals. The realization made the fear quite recognizable. Why couldn't they keep to their own island? He was doing quite well by himself, thank you. He vowed never to dream again. That night he slept very little. The wind kept saying things it was not allowed to say. Cries of madmen filled the air. Drums, that's it. Down by the cove, and damn, a fire with 20 naked bodies dancing round the flames. A man in the middle, tied to a pole, was Jesus. A big black man with sweat running all the way from his eyeballs to the sand. Damn them! This was his island. Depression turned to hate, turned to gun, and ran into the midst. Flintlocks bang. Someone fell, and everyone else scattered on the waves. The body with a bullet in its belly groaned. It moaned and moved and mouthed the sand. Jesus on the pole had moons for eyes as he gazed upon the white devil, the white wild devil with his fire stick still smoking hell. But white devil Crusoe cut free the bonds of sacrifice, and kisses at his brown feet fell that would make Magdalene quite jealous. A fish called Friday. At first the black man seemed quite hungry. He tore out the heart of the one Crusoe shot while it was still wet and beating. No, this wouldn't do. Crusoe refused the bloody offering. a missionary education was called for. He took the man by the hand to the water's edge, bathed off the blood, washed him, touched him, ever so slightly felt the bulge between his thighs. No, Crusoe, no. Baptize him, save him, pray for him. So in the name of Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, Friday was born, because a man called Robinson thought it must have been Friday, as he taught the meaning of fish and fishermen. It took all night to get him to say his name, but soon both were saying it over. Friday, Friday, Friday. Some strange psalm beneath the moon ascended, cries of two souls lost in tune to one song called Lonely. Crusoe dreamed again, if only it had been a woman. Homeward Bound. Let's find this. Of course they built up the stockade that summer. They couldn't be too sure when Friday's brothers would be back for supper. And somehow Crusoe learned to dream again of England, far off England. He kept the signal fire on the hill, stacked tall with driftwood. Meanwhile, all fish and forage, they talked in sign and sound and touch, but somehow the trust was never there. Crusoe woke in a sweat more than malarial to see two eyeballs looking down at him with simple hunger, and so began to sleep alone, except for the gun, at the top of the tall tree platform, pulling up the ladder every night while Friday's voice filled the island with lamentations to an older god than Crusoe. When the ship finally came, Crusoe refused to look back at a shadow that was a man shedding salted tears on the already salty sand. Instead, he asked the boatswain to point the way to England, closer, safer England. And now he wakes in a sweat when nights are hot to feel his fear, some dark tropic constrictor.